and we are in conversation with her in concern to IPR law and what stands in IPR. And IPR is more than just intellectual property, but it has many more aspects that are related to it. So I'll give everybody a small introduction about Rajeshwari ma'am, so that then we can begin a conversation with her on certain aspects of IPR law, what is currently evident in the field itself, and maybe a little bit of insight to maybe students or any lawyer or any youngster who's looking into working themselves into the field of IP or IPR. All right. So Rajeshwari Hariharan, the founder of Rajeshwari and Associates, have been in the field since 27 years. She has been practicing intellectual property law, and she has a full service IPR law firm in New Delhi, specializing in the field of patent and design. One of her many achievements, and I think that this is amazingly insightful. And Rajeshwari ma'am, we are very excited for to understand a little bit about this also. Her achievements include winning the first ever compulsory license for NACTO, uh, and litigating the issue right through until the Supreme Court. So we'll understand more about Rajeshwari ma'am in a little while, because we are in a deep dive conversation with her about the laws, maybe trademark, design, and what all encompasses this topic when we are discussing. Hi Rajeshwari ma'am, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for inviting me for a conversation.
All right, same here. Okay, so Rajeshwari ma'am, we are going to begin with a very, a very basic question. So to start with, I would like to ask you what considerations guided you towards carving out a niche for yourself in the IPR industry or the legal field itself.
So it's a good question. When I initially started off my career, I was in general. I used to do general law, and I used to do work on contracts, on developers, on Urban Land Sealing Act, and also company issues, and every issue under the sun. Sometime thereafter, some of my one of my relatives had some kind of a product which they had developed, and they wanted to file a patent. So that's when I realized that there is something called a patent, and there's some. It's a very niche area, because at that time, in around 97, 98, when we were looking for who will help us, who's the lawyer who will help us with this, we hardly had anything to count on our fingers. And so we had a hard time. Then of course we did find someone, and then we that relative of mine did file a patent. But that inspired me to think that perhaps there is a need, for people to specialize in this area. Then I did look for firms, and ultimately I joined KNS Partners. I was with them for 15 years, and then of course I started my own law firm, Rajeshwari and Associates. But then thereafter also, during my entire journey, I have always found that IPR is a very interesting field, and it touches our life in every aspect. I go for a number of workshops and training programs all over the
Correct.
country, and there was a one anecdotal incident that I would like to narrate, where I had gone to Palampur for a program, and it was a training program on IPR. It was for the university. They had invited a lot of people from the university, the researchers, and so on, and of course some of the industry people as well. And in Palampur, in that region, what they grow and what they actually have, which is their natural product, is apples.
Okay.
So there was a farmer there who had come for the lecture, and I was to speak in Hindi as well as in English. So it was quite interesting, because my Hindi was a little broken at that time. So in whatever I could gather, I did speak in a bit of Hindi and a bit of English. And the farmer, I don't know what he understood and what he didn't understand. At the end of the lecture, he came back and he called me aside, and he said, "Look, you know what? I prepare some very beautiful apples. I would like you to come to my farm and see them. So I thought it was something very normal, it was just like another farmer asking me to come and see their product. And I was quite used to it because in the good old days when I used to practice land laws, we you wouldn't believe it, we used to get fees. Of course we get fees, but there would be some people whom we would represent who are farmers, and they would actually come and give you lots of onions in a bag, and they throw
Correct.
potatoes in a bag, and they say this is my fee. And because that's how they understood what fee is. Of course,
Right.
that era is now over, but I thought it was one of those things. Then I eventually went to his farm, which was not very far away, and he showed me some very beautiful, apples which are hybrid apples, and they have such a beautiful aroma that you
Right.
can smell them from 1 kilometer from when this farm is going to start. So I was thinking that all apples will smell the same way. He said, no, you can just, he showed me some other apples which are common apples, and they did not smell the same way. You had to take them very close to your nose and then find out if there is an aroma. But this is
Right.
something that was smelling it was really aromatic. So then we did file a patent. We did tell him that you have to find out what is the ingredient which gives you the aroma, and we did help him a lot to find out. Then we got him tied up with an institute. We did help him out with the patents. But
Right.
that is an interesting incident, because there are people like that who are in the hinterland, and
Right.
who are touched by patent, and
Right.
who do not know that it is really something called a patent which they have to go for, but they believe that there is something they must go for. They don't know what exactly it is. They know it
Correct.
must be protected. They don't know whether it
Right.
should be a patent or a trademark or a copyright. And it's quite interesting to deal with such people. Other times also, I had gone to another place in Punjab for a lecture. There was a guy who came with a beautiful tractor, wonderful tractor also, and it's a entirely self-made kind of a product. We did file a patent for that, but those are small little people who, small, very small entrepreneurs,
Correct.
self-driven, motivated people who make the things, and he was supplying that product free of cost to his entire village.
Right.
He would people would come and help him to make the product. So we talk about patent, and then we say that we should commercialize, we should file a patent, we should make money out of it and all. He said, yes, yes, I want to file a patent because I want everyone in the village to know that you must file a patent.
Right. Yeah.
But he said that I'm not here to make money. So he and his neighboring villages, people, whoever want to come and get the product from him, they have to come with some money so that he can just buy the spare parts and make the product, and he'll
Correct.
make the tractor for you. So it's like, customize the tractor for yourself kind of thing. So there are interesting episodes that come your way, interesting instances that come and inspire you. So these are the things that inspired me, and I thought that IPR is a field where we should be there, and perhaps we can then touch the lives of people and help them out. You touch patients when you're doing patent work. You touch farmers. You touch a whole bunch of people. In the IPR regime, you touch people in the music line. You touch everyone, and
Correct.
so it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. So maybe mostly in the unforeseen places, I think that you find patent, and they were really interesting stories. And I think it's more of an adventure going, being an IP lawyer, or I don't know. I just realized out of that, because yes, you were talking about trade. That you go to all these trade fairs, etc., where they are, they have all these products and they are all customized by them. I think that that is really true, and seems extremely adventurous sometimes to have those experiences, which I think a very hardly people get to have those experiences. All right, so Rajeshwari ma'am, let's move on to the next question. uh, as an IP lawyer, you also advise on procedural compliances, we guess. And what are your thoughts on the increasing need for IP compliances in India? And what do you think is the status? Is it really increasing? Is it mundane, or is it, again, as we were talking about, is it is India coming up with more uh, very different kind of products, or is there a pathway that everybody is mundanely following according to you?
So in IP, with regard to trademark or copyright or patents, you always have certain procedures to be complied with. Of course, it is required because that we have the trips. So there are certain standards that you need to comply with. So we must comply with those standards. Our laws are built that way. We have to comply with that.
Right.
But as far as procedure is concerned, I think in India, we may, or we should rather, we should dilute the procedure a little more, for the reason that we should look at grassroots inventions as well. We have inventions, we have products from grassroots level, as well as at the most sophisticated level of a multinational company like a Pfizer or a
Correct.
Novartis or something. So that's a sophisticated level, and you have grassroots level kind of invention. So
Right.
procedural compliance for a grassroots people, for the mid-level people,
Right.
is rather
Right.
cumbersome. So you should not make the system so cumbersome that you must file this form in this way, otherwise your patent will lapse. There
Right.
should be some kind of I think this is something that I would moot in a forum, in an appropriate forum, that perhaps for grassroots inventions we may need to think of some utility models which are easier to apply, which have less procedural compliances. Don't make it procedure or intensive kind of a thing, so that those kind of inventions can also be protected. We are talking about MSMEs, we're talking about startups.
Correct.
Look at the growth chart of Japan. So, this is something that we can learn from. So, Japan also has very sophisticated industries like a Takeda, and they also have their own growth rate, their own small companies. How did they do all this? So
Right.
after the Second World War, they have still come out as a very strong developed nation. How did this
Right.
happen? So this happened because they decided to encourage their own industry. So initially, Japanese, if you read the history in the 1940s and 50s, you will find Japanese were the ones who were copying everything. So I'm
Right.
not saying that we should copy everything. All I'm saying is that's how they started, and
Mhm.
thereafter they are now the one of the biggest innovators. So this is how the growth starts. So
Correct.
in India also, they initially you have companies who are perhaps MSMEs or in the grassroots level inventions, which may not the products or the inventions which they make may not rise to the level of a huge invention or a huge leap like a
Right.
Galileo or a Newton's theory. It may not
Right.
rise to that level. It may not be
Right.
the first of its kind, but
Right.
it is a product which is extremely useful.
Right.
So there must be a new category which we should carve out for such kind of inventions. Perhaps we should
Right.
bring in something like a utility model, which is easy to acquire, which has a shorter term,
Correct.
and perhaps then we should encourage these kind of people. If you expect that every invention, every product that you make will always rise to the level of a great invention, which will then drive the force, which will then drive the industry, but it might not just happen overnight. Yes, we will become innovators, we will make new molecules, our companies will make new products, but there is a growth process for that. So you have to take the industry from that perspective, and perhaps we should make our procedures a bit, dilute the procedures a little bit, so that utility model kind of things can be introduced. It may not, and it varies from industry to industry. So our
Right.
pharmaceutical industry may be well advanced, but if you talk
Correct.
about a textile industry, they may not be that much advanced. Or if you talk about a toy industry, they are still
Correct.
developing. So they
Right.
are the ones who perhaps need a hand holding. So there is where you need to bring in utility models, saying that
Right.
look here, small innovations you have made, yes, they are patentable. We will give you utility model. The period of validity will be 5 years. It's less procedural. The procedural compliances are less, but you will get some kind of protection. So that's a lot of encouragement which which people get, and
Okay.
that really helps a lot. So you can keep that kind of a situation also. I mean, that's a parallel thing that can be had. Of course, now we have the designs law, which is very helpful.
Yes.
So I would say on a, overall, we should consider utility model in as one of the aspects, and even under trips there is no bar to consider this consideration. It is
Okay.
always possible under trips to include utility models. Many countries have it, like Germany has. I think Japan has it, and
Right.
I'm not sure, but I think China also has utility models.
Right.
So it is certainly possible to develop that kind of a system in India.
And that's correct. When you talk about procedure, I think that in Indian, one of the aspects of Indian government is that the procedures are extremely long and they are very similar for each of the fields. I think that we cannot call it customization, but yes, we need to understand the requirements of each field, and also how we need to push some of the industries to innovation. That's correct. All right. So yes, in continuation to this question of is there an increase? What do you think are the biggest hurdles in the IP prosecution and enforcement of those in India?
I think there are, instead of saying hurdles, I would say, issues that we need, challenges that we need to look at.
Right.
One, in India, we need to look at awareness. We In the tier one and the tier two cities, there may be some awareness, but the awareness needs to percolate down, so that
Right.
you can have grassroots inventions coming up and more inventions. That's how your industrial progress will be stirred and developed and propelled speedily.
Right.
And then we should also look at perhaps a little bit of amendment in our law, because new use of a known substance is not patentable. So
Okay.
I'm it's my personal view that you should permit the new use of a known substance, for the reason
Correct.
that in a lot of companies or a lot of therapies in India which are homegrown, they use
Yes.
known substances, like you use a turmeric with something else, or just use turmeric for something, for some new indication. So
Correct.
those kind of utilities can be patentable, and those are inventions that you must encourage. Similarly, software is a area that we should encourage. So there are a lot of areas which we
Yes.
should encourage, and once we have awareness which is percolated across,
Right.
then you will have a very good system which will be a well-oiled system which will run very well, and you can then see ourselves as a developed nation having a lot of IPR, because we now complain that when it comes to patents,
Right.
70% of the patents are filed by companies originating from abroad, and it's only 30% who file from India. The ratio
Right.
should change. At least
Correct.
60 or 70% should be people who are inventions who are filed from India. And
Right.
then you should at least, if not 60, 70%, it should at least become 50-50. That is when you will see industrial progress. So to encourage in the Indian inventions, Indian inventors, it's not like they don't invent. In fact, many of the things which are in many of the products, many of the medicines which are invented outside India are invented even by Indian inventors. In fact, there is a
Yes.
yes. So there are a lot of Indians who go there and then they are able to innovate. So if they are able to innovate in that kind of environment, you have to provide that environment in India. You have to provide that environment in the universities. That is where the inventions sprout. That's the hotbed of innovations.
Yes.
That's where people are with a free mind thinking. The fundamental research is taking place there. So we should place emphasis on fundamental research, on applied research, and new products coming in, and that is how it will drive and propel innovation in India. So just giving platitudes, or just all of us thinking that all right, we are now going to become the 21st century, 31st century, it's not going to take us further unless we take concrete steps. And the concrete steps perhaps will be in uh, bringing about utility models, simplifying your procedures, making people more aware, incentivizing them. Perhaps we should be telling people that all right, there are rare diseases for which
Right.
we need medicines.
Correct.
Just to give you an example, there are some very very rare diseases like cystic fibrosis, and the medicines which are used for treatment of those diseases are not manufactured across the globe they are not manufactured so much in India. A lot of across the globe there are only few people who would manufacture them. So we should give incentives to our own companies and say that, look here, you manufacture these kind of medicines for these kind of rare diseases, we will give you
Right.
the following incentives. So there will be
Correct.
a lot of people who will jump in for that. So we have to incentivize our people. And one of the things with regard to enforcement, I would say that somehow feel that uh, it's very it's a lengthy process. I'm not going to get the relief. I'm not going to wait for 20 years to stop someone, and that's why I will not enforce my rights.
Right.
So all of that stems from the normal experience which we have in the courts. If you, except for perhaps Delhi High Court, Bombay High Court, Chennai High Court, other courts are not so familiar with IP. So
Yes.
the district courts in various places, they need to be given a lot of training, and
Yes.
with that they will come up to speed.
Correct.
And perhaps we should develop the law on damages, so people feel that all right, if I'm going to file a case, if my IP is violated, and if I do file a case, then perhaps I will even get damages. So
Correct.
with the era of damages coming in, the kind of infringements will also decrease. The amount of
Correct.
infringements which happen, that will
Right.
decrease. And then we also develop the law to say that all right, if you've been found to infringe once, then there will be repercussions on other areas as well. Because
Right.
today what we find is there is someone who makes a new product, it is
Right.
copied across the country, and
Right.
this little company who is an MSME or something, or even if he is a well established company, it's
Correct.
always struck for resources to enforce his patent or his design or his trademark all over the country. He's not going to be chasing people all over the country, and there'll be thousands of people. So if there is, if we bring awareness, and if we, kind of bring jurisprudence and perhaps even law to say that if you've been found to infringe once, then there will be some implications, there will be consequences,
Yes.
and perhaps there will be certain consequences which can visit you, and those will be serious consequences.
Right.
Then perhaps you will find that people will not go for copying, rather than they will go for um, making their own innovations for designs and new products. I think it is definitely possible for a person to come up with a new product, new design. There is absolutely no reason for him to copy,
Right.
to copy it just as it is.
Right.
Absolutely no reason for you to copy the same trademark. These are
Right.
all things that you can definitely design around, you can go about it. But that's where we need to come. We don't just depend upon the courts. Of course, are doing a brilliant job. I mean, our courts are doing, the judges are stretched far beyond what they are doing. They
Yes.
are really
Yes.
stretched, and they're giving their best there.
Correct.
So I would say that we need to develop the system across the board. So it's not good enough for only Delhi High Court to be very good or Bombay High Court to be very good. We need to have systems across the country which are equally good, and it has to be cost effective, as well as
Yes.
at the end of the day, the person should feel that I've gone to the court, I got my remedy very quickly, maybe within a year or something, and I also got damages. That is when he will say, all right, now I will innovate, because when I make a new product, I am able to enforce it, I am able to get damages, I am able to keep my product as the unique product in the market, and I'm able to maintain my identity in the market. So
Correct.
to drive that feeling across, we need to bring a bit of a systemic change.
Correct. Yes, when we talk about infringement, I think that in pharmaceuticals, etc., there's a huge issue that comes with infringement because once you have, and then there is a lot of other things that comes in concern to enforcement and practice and what we are doing right now. I think the same was the issue with maybe United States some 10 years back, 15 years back. But they had made some amendments to protect these pharmaceuticals at least because that was the highest rate of infringement to which people were given incentives for all those things. So yes,
Yeah, I
that's
have.
true. And
Yeah, one more thing that we should consider in our law is what
yes,
also the US has done is that, one of the problems that we all face is that Chinese products are,
correct.
rampantly come into India, and they are all,
Yes,
you have today you make a new product, tomorrow onwards
yes,
you have the whole Chinese container coming in, containers after
correct.
containers are coming in, and it is very
Yes,
difficult to stop them. So
correct.
perhaps we should think of some kind of amendment in our laws whereby even the Chinese or other people who people who import from various countries, we should be able to stop them, like the Americans have done. The American law says that even if the
Yes,
product is patented in America, but if
yes,
you've imported a patented product, then
right,
also that importer also will be liable.
right,
So perhaps
right,
we including, for example, even if we've prepared a particular process by a particular by a product by a particular process, and if that
correct,
process is practiced outside India,
right.
even that should be, that person who is practicing the process outside India should also be liable. So if we bring changes of that nature in our law,
Yes.
then we will be able to stop such infringement, and it will incentivize our own innovators.
Correct. Yes, we do agree to that, and I think that you're talking when it comes to China. Yes, I think a lot of countries are valuing their own, their own produced products in comparison to that, and there needs to be a balance that needs to be, constructed uh, to bridge that gap of how much should you let another country that is able to produce on mass basis for your own your own entrepreneurs can be balanced out. That was very amazing insight on the topic. Let's move on to the next question. How has the pandemic influenced the field of IPR, according to you? And what challenges and trends have been observed during this time in concern to the IPR?
So during the pandemic, I think most of the people have gone online. There is online shopping, there is online, everything is now online.
Yes,
Courts have gone online, which is amazing because it was beyond our imagination that we
correct.
can have court proceedings through video conference. It was an
Correct.
anathema, completely unthinkable. It was like you have to be physically present, but
Hmm.
now we are all virtually present, and we can actually do the matters. So
Correct.
there's been a lot of change in that way. I think also people have moved online, so we can find a lot of online infringement. So that online space has become very, very relevant. All the cyber laws, the cyber issues have come up. So we are finding more and more cases of data breach, of
Correct.
privacy issues.
Right.
We are finding more and more online infringement issues. So these are issues that are now coming up, for which our law needs to be more. We need to probably do something more with our law in order to deal with these kind of infringement issues. So you
Correct.
have people, now they are promoting their products through WhatsApp or through Telegram, and
Correct.
because social media as well as these kind of platforms, they give you a veil of anonymity. So
Right.
you have infringers who are floating around anonymously, whereas in the real world you would be able to perhaps catch them and do something. So with these anonymous people, finding them itself is a big deal. It's a big problem. Finding their origin, who are they, who is the one, is it the same person who has adopted another identity, and how many identities has he adopted? We don't know. So that is an area which is now coming up, which is throwing up new challenges. And we are also seeing a number of online infringement issues, be it on Amazon or Flipkart. So those are routine number of cases that we see. We are also
Right.
seeing that despite the pandemic, there is no dearth of innovation. So one would
Right.
imagine that because of this pandemic, there will be a lull in innovation. It is not so.
Correct.
In fact, because of the pandemic, in fact, because of the first wave, we found that people in universities, they had come up
Right.
with amazing products. The IIT came up with its own kit, and
Yes.
yes, so many, they came up with kits which got commercialized, which the inventor even realized the value. He realized the value, and he got his royalty also.
Right.
So it was so quick, and so
Right.
many patents were filed, not just on kits, antibodies people came up with,
Yes.
and people came up with so many devices, all to
Right.
deal with COVID-19, various aspects of COVID-19, be it an oxygen infrastructure or otherwise.
Right.
So I think pandemic has not just thrown up a problem for all of us, but it has actually, we have converted it into an opportunity. Our innovators and our people have converted it into an opportunity, and we are finding more and more innovations coming up in this space. So that's quite an interesting thing. I never expected. I was always under the impression that because of this pandemic, there's going to be a complete lull, and people,
Right.
the universities are gone and they can never do anything. It is not so. They have used the opportunity. They have used the pandemic as an opportunity, and they've come with great products. And I'm not talking about just Delhi. I'm talking about the hinterland as well.
Mhm. Correct.
We
Okay.
had
Yes, that's true.
we had people coming up with some herbal sanitizer.
Yes.
So
Correct.
that was really amazing.
Yes, yes, there have been a lot of Ayurvedic products that have come up. Not, yes, of course, they are not foolproof to vaccination, but yes, they do provide you with, and people have turned towards, more traditional ways of, being health conscious and all that. So yes, that's true. But I think where you were and you are extremely right is we need to find out how to curb the cyber laws that we are looking at right now and how to investigate on the same, because still in India there is a very little understanding of how to procedurally follow a cyber activity which might be negatively affecting uh, you know the environment around us. So yes, that is something that India needs to work upon. But yeah, thank you so much, ma'am, on that. Let's move on to our next question. And so, how much, according to you, is the impact of exhaustion of research in the fields of intellectual property rights? So, we just talked about that, but do you think that still it was only in the field of maybe pharmaceutical or only in the field of, when we are talking about uh, medical, because we were facing a medical thing. So, but has there been in IP, activities in the other fields?
Yes, there has been a lot of IP activity in other fields as well. So it is not, and as I was saying, it is not just diagnostic kits, and it is not just
Right.
repurposed medicines which have come up, where
Correct.
people have tried to find new use of various known drugs. So it is not just that. We have found that people were innovating, and they are innovating on other products as well. There were devices which came up,
Yes.
oxygen generators,
Right.
concentrators, and people came up with robotic hand, or a robotic device, automated device which can go and deliver medicines, an automated device which can go and deliver products. There was a guy who developed kind of an massage, kind of
Right.
a robotic arm which can do your massage. So it's
Right,
just a
right,
device. So you can
right,
purchase it at home and you can use it. So there were many such innovations which came, which not just be related to COVID, but even otherwise. So
right,
it was as if, COVID just gave us a time to, think about the innovations which we had in our mind. Otherwise, all of these innovations would have taken many years, perhaps to
right,
fructify and perhaps to come up to the table for innovation, for patenting. But otherwise, we found a long number of such innovations which came up. There's a big list, and the list is absolutely, unending. So we
right,
had many innovations which came, and I would say universities and organizations have never taken this as a problem. They have actually seized it as an opportunity, and they have used it to their fullest extent. And I would say that, we've had very great good inventions which came out, something that we never thought of. We never thought there will be a, test kit which can come up so quickly. There are companies who have developed test kits, like MyLab
right.
has developed a test kit which you can use at home. So these kind of innovations were hard to imagine, but for this pandemic, it just threw up an opportunity which made people to think, and so they have come up with the product. So it's like you throw up a challenge, and we will come up with 10 answers.
Correct.
So it is not exhaustion of research; it is spurring more in research.
Right. I think that when we were not going to universities and maybe schools also, we were utilizing, most of the people thought that it should be utilized in a positive kind of way. And I think that that is the reason that we were, if we were swamped with, these new ideas that came into being, and then into the, of course, forwarded to the IP field. But yes, I think that we have utilized that way. Most of the people have utilized their time in a better way, possibly. uh, du- During a pandemic, I think Indians are good at that when it comes to doing all those jugars in the time of need. Yeah. Okay. So Rajeshwari ma'am, we are at the conclusion of the conversation here, and our last question is, to on a concluding note, what advice would you like to give to our IP enthusiasts? Because we understand that you had begun, 27 years back, having a very little understanding. I think that the world had a very little understanding of IP itself at that point of time. What would you like to tell somebody who has just started in IP law, and maybe who is an entrepreneur and has to understand something? What would you like to tell those people in legal field as well as on the entrepreneurial front about IP?
When we started the conversation, I said IP touches us in every way, in every
Yes,
aspect of our life. So I
yes,
think that somewhere in the school, perhaps in some class, I don't know which is the appropriate one, but somewhere in our college or in some of our school or something, we need to bring about the sense of what is IP, and we should introduce it, at least a basic sense of that. I'm not saying a detailed PhD on IP, but at least a basic sense of understanding. Okay, this is a trademark, this is a copyright, this is a design, and if I do something, then all of these are relevant for me, and I need to understand this, and I need to know whether I need to get it there or not. So if that kind of understanding comes, perhaps in schools and colleges, then we will go somewhere. We will with our we have great minds here. There is no dearth of great minds. We also have great minds in IT field. So
right,
as an entrepreneur, as common man, as citizens, this is
right,
something we should think about. Our educators, our ministers should think about introducing
right,
IP as a curriculum, as part of our curriculum in schools, as well as in
right,
the colleges. There are a lot of colleges who are now doing that. There are people who are coming and giving them guest lectures. So it is happening in that way. But as a formal part of your, curriculum, I think should IP should be as a part of your curriculum in some class. at least in the final classes, ninth and 10th or something, so that the student gets an idea that all right, there is something called IP, and there is something that I can do there. And perhaps even as a in their colleges where people are studying engineering and people are studying sciences, IP should be encouraged, and people should be given a very fair knowledge about IP, so that they have an idea that there is research which I will do, and it will be protected in this way, and this is what I should do. I should be aware of it. There is traditional knowledge which I should be aware of. So these are all aspects that you should be just aware of. So
Correct.
quite like you should be aware of how to deal with property, how to deal with an FIR. These are all things that you should know. These are all basic aspects that you should know of law. No one is asking you to become a hardcore lawyer. You don't need to, but to have a basic sense, to just have a basic idea. So that should be encouraged in our schools and colleges. This is number one. And as entrepreneurs, as people who are enthusiastic about IP, I think those people, especially entrepreneurs, we often take it for granted that all right, IP is something we will deal with.
Right.
It's good to have, good to know kind of a thing. It's not something necessary at the moment. But what we
Right.
forget at the end of the day is it's what you start with. The name that you give your company is your trademark. It's what you're starting with, it's what the brand that you're building. At the end of the day, after 4 years, if you realize that the brand that you built was actually deceptively similar to some other brand, or is a
Correct.
namesake of some other brand, famous brand, then you are
Right.
your 4 years of effort is all gone down. So
Right.
IP should be thought of, should be considered right from the beginning as a very important aspect. Quite like you apply for GST and you apply for service tax registration and all those registrations. This is something that you must, this is fundamental. This is also part and parcel of that entire litany of things that you do. So this is some,
Right.
this, that much importance must be given to that. I
Hmm.
find that entrepreneurs who are tech oriented, so who's the startups who are tech oriented, they definitely think about IP, because their
Yes.
whole product is based on IP. They come up with a new product, so they,
Yes.
and their product, so they want to protect the IP. But those who are not tech oriented, are kind of service oriented, or like a online platform for something, so they tend to take this a little bit easy,
Right.
and perhaps that's where they make the mistake. For students and people, other enthusiasts, people who are thinking about IP, IP is a very very lucrative and good field to be in. I would say that it's a lot of hard work, because it's an everyday learning. Every day you
Right.
get new inventions. There are no two cases which have the same facts, so
Correct.
it's a lot of hard work to be done. But at the end of the day, you feel very happy and very good about it, because either you have helped an inventor, or you've helped a company to do something, or you've enforced their rights. So it leaves you with a good feeling. You've actually done something good. So some in those days, I would say about 5, 7, 10 years ago, people used to think these IP lawyers are all some kind of elite people, some elite club, and
Yes.
they have nothing to do with real life. They are all
Right.
some lotus eaters, and I don't know what they're talking about. And we people who do property law, we do labor law, and we do other laws.
Right.
Those are the real laws. That's what people are really affected with. It's the everyday law.
Correct.
But I would say IP is not an elite club nor a lotus eater kind of law, because
Right.
it affects you in everyday life.
Yes.
Everything that you prepare, everything that you make, everything that you do has some kind of IP attached to it. So it's not like a good to have thing, luxurious item, or a luxurious law to know about, but it is something very, very essential. It is very basic. Today it has become very basic and fundamental. So
Correct.
I think those who are aspiring to become IP lawyers, I would say they should pursue that instinct, and they should pursue that path and work hard on it. And I think there is, there's a lot of scope in IP. There are many areas which are emerging. There is a confluence of IP with competition. That's a new area which is emerging, and there are several new areas which are emerging. It's an expanding field all the time. So I would definitely encourage people to study IP and give their contribution in this field. It's so expanding that there is room for everyone and more.
I think that you're very, very correct when you're saying that. I think that the cookies that we might be baking on, baking sheet might have an IP attached to it, and the organization that you're going to be working on, the name of the organization itself has a trademark attached to it. The logo that you might be using for any random aspect or picking out of an organization is going to have a trademark associated with it. Those are very fundamental things that we need to think upon. And a push to innovation, I think, can further be put through by providing the basic of the basic aspects and basic understanding of IP law among students who are especially going to be the researchers of the future. So yes, Rajeshwari ma'am, that was a great insight on all these things. Thank you so much for being with us here today. And I think that this should be valuable to not just an entrepreneur or maybe a student who's looking to work into the IP field, but also to an average person who's sitting somewhere trying to understand something about IP law, and how maybe they might be doing something that can be patented, or I don't know, maybe. Uh, the design could be worked upon in concern to IP. So yes, it can be utilized in any way possible. Thank you so much for your great insights and providing a vision to anybody who's wanting to understand IP law in any way possible. Thank you, Rajeshwari ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for having me over and for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.